Good mythic. Wait, no, this isn't that. Hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of my not so long running series of Spice Market.
Oh, hello.
The spice must flow. Anyways, so Spice Market is the series where we talk not about entire deck builds, but about specific tech cards, that little bit of spice that you can throw into whatever deck that you are building that really pushes you over the edge whenever you're facing your opponent. So for today's episode, we are going to be talking about maybe one of the most spice potential decks out there right now, which is the Mew Box deck. This is my little Mewtwo that we built on stream. You can find me on Twitch, where you can see me build stuff like this for about 45 minutes at a time while I stare down at a camera. Anyways. All right, Mew Box Spice. There is some weird stuff that we're gonna talk about today. I'm gonna start with the most obvious little piece of spice that I am not seeing run in many Mew Box decks. So, obvious spice. Obvious. This is pepper. This isn't. This is just straight up pepper, right? Like, it's obvious. You put it on there. It tastes good, but maybe next time you could go a little bit more exotic. The obvious spice is spell tag. I'm not seeing spell tag run in any Mew Box decks. I've watched a few videos. I mean, the decks they're building are great. Maybe they just don't find the space for it. That's fair, but why not? You have a psychic type Pokemon that everyone's going to be coming after hard. Odds are they're going to be taking prizes off of that Pokemon, right? Why not throw a spell tag in there? Put 4 damage counters wherever you want. ¿Por qué no los dos? I don't know, like, why just put a spell tag in your Mew Boxes? Just do it. Just do it. Nike. Anyways, that's the first one. That one is super obvious. The second one that we are going to talk about is a little less obvious, but I think has some potential if you can find space in the deck for this. It's a little weird. I think that, so this one came up yesterday. I built for a big like group get together thing that we did yesterday at my place. We played a bunch of games, had a little friendly tournament, and I, for the first part of that day, I built what I called my leftovers deck. Now, don't get me wrong, these were nice leftovers, but this was all the cards that I hadn't put into a deck yet. And what could I build? So I was like, okay, well, I've got a couple of extra Mewtwo's, flexing. I had a couple of extra Mewtwo's. I was like, okay, let me build some sort of a weird Mew Box deck with that and some of the extra GXs that I have that I'm not finding any place for in other decks. And one of those cards was Venomoth. Now, maybe there are some decks out there running Venomoth, but Grass doesn't see any love these days. But I think the nice thing about Grass, the reason it doesn't see love is because of Reshazard, and because you can't get energy accelerated onto Grass decks as easily as you'd like, right? So you just got the type disadvantage, and there's reasons. But Grass decks have some very interesting attacks, and Venomoth in particular has a very, very interesting attack. So Venomoth's main attack, normally it just does 110 damage, which is not great. Let's be honest. You don't want to be hitting 110 only, and that's the only thing you get out of it. But if you put that Venomoth in the discard pile in a Mew Box deck, and if you use its first attack with either a Janine or a Koga's Trap on that turn, that turns that Venomoth's 110 into something that can turn the tide for you, very honestly. So I'll tell you what the attack does. If you played a Janine this turn, prevent all damage to your Pokemon or this Pokemon. I think it's this Pokemon, but either way, you're not going to move it out, and it's hard to gust. Prevent all damage from basic Pokemon. It doesn't say GX, doesn't say Tag Team GX, it's just basic. So unless your opponent is running a Whimsicott build, or if they want to like roll out a Naga or a Malamar, I'm trying to think of other stage 1 Pokemon out there, or stage 2s that can even attack you. Maybe if they've got a crazy Dragonite Lance nonsense going on, but for the most part, every deck out there is attacking with basics. So it doesn't even have to be GX, and you prevent all damage done to that Mewtwo from basic Pokemon on the next turn. And yes, you're pinging for 110. You might not be knocking out, but ping for 110 again, and that's a knockout. And you stop the avalanche of damage that is going to be coming Mewtwo's way. So I think that Venomoth with Janine, if you can find... Now, Janine's it's a garbage card. You look at the top 4, you take 2, and you shuffle the other 2 back in. It's a complete garbage trainer. It feels bad to use it, don't get me wrong. But if you know that it's going to prevent damage, that's what you're using it for. Now, the other half of the attack is also very interesting. And I also think that Koga's Trap is going to be super relevant in a meta that, you know, if you're not playing against a Pikarom with Zero Aura, if you are confusing and poisoning their Pokemon and they have no easy way of getting out of the active, honestly, my Leftovers deck beat a couple of decks. It beat a Whimsicott deck, it beat a Turbo Rayquaza deck. Now, granted, I had some good turns, they had some bad turns, that's totally fair. But this Throw Together deck still made it over the edge, right? It made it over like that victory line, so to speak. And that was also because of Koga's Trap. So, Venomoth with Koga's Trap, what does that do? If you played Koga's Trap this turn, this attack does 90 more damage. So now we're talking 200. Now, against a Rayquaza, a Turbo Ray, 200 damage is all you need. That's a KO. So the Koga's Trap doesn't really matter of its effect. But say you're playing against another Mew Mew or a Reshi build, right? Something that's not going to have as easy a time retreating unless you have a switch. Well, you're doing 200 damage, okay, plus the confusion, so it's going to be hard for them to attack. It's a coin flip. And if they miss it, they hit themselves. So if they hit themselves, it's 230 that you get. And if they're going to try to attack you, they're going to take damage from the poison. 10, or I think it's either 10 or 20. I don't know what poison does. Ugh. It's either 10 or 20. And so they take 10 to their turn, 10 coming back. So that's 250. 10 going back to them, 260. Boom. If you hit a Reshizard and it doesn't want to leave the active, and it tries to hit you and it misses, you've basically sealed that Reshizard's fate with a Venomoth attack and Koga's Trap. Like, it's beautiful. So I think that is the second piece of spice. It's a complicated piece of spice. How many of these Kogas and Janines you want to run in a deck like that? I don't know. Because you got to find them. But if you run a couple of those and run some Pokegears, I think you can get them when you need them. So let's talk about the third and final little piece of spice that I actually haven't tested, but that I think could be an interesting little bit. And that is Spiritomb and Hustle Belt. Now, again, Mew Boxes, how much space do you have to get some of these things in there? But if you can run 1 or 2 Spiritombs in your deck, you're already running the Rainbow Energies if you're running a Mew Box, right? Odds are you might need all 4 if you want a Miraculous Duo, right? Like the thing that lets you heal everybody. But assuming you've got 1 extra Rainbow Energy somewhere during the game, you can throw that Rainbow Energy onto the Spiritomb. Boom. So that does 10 damage to it, which helps. You do the Building Spite. Say you do Building Spite a few more turns, because it can just kind of sit there in the back while your Mew Mew is tanking and trying to buy you time, right? Eventually, you're going to find that 1 or 2 Hustle Belts that you throw in that deck. Throw that on. Hustle Belt, when it's at 50 damage, all of a sudden now, I think you're doing what? 220? Let's see. 150. Yeah, you're doing 220. 220 damage is really good. That's a lot for a 1-prizer. And that, I think, can sway the balance a little bit, because you don't really need to do much more from a resource perspective. Once you got the Rainbow Energy and the Hustle Belt on, it's just time. Time is all you need. And Mewtwo, it can do a few things, and one of those things is buy time. So I think that Spiritomb and Hustle Belt as a one prizer that can do big damage in this deck is a real opportunity. So anyways, that is the three little pieces of spice that I think could be interesting for a Mew Box build. I'm probably missing things. This deck is like, this archetype is just complete chaos. It's in a good way. You can put any GX in the discard, and there's so much that I think hasn't even been explored yet. So I think it's gonna be really cool. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what other spice you would throw into that Mew Box deck that you are thinking, you haven't seen people play, in the comments. Subscribe if you like this. You can check out some of the other Spice Market videos that I have posted on Reshazard and Pikarom. And I will catch you all next time. Carpe Awesome.